All right. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. I had to adjust everything right before stream, so one second. I think I'm a little bit quiet. I've been messing around with my audio all week long. I've been doing a lot of live streams over on Twitch because I've been gaming a bunch. But I have, let me just jack this up just a hair. Probably like right in there. Should be a lot better. All right. But I've been doing a lot more gaming, and there's just so many little settings, and I was like, oh, you know what? What's on YouTube? Sometimes I like to look up videos on YouTube, and overwhelmingly, a lot of the videos I watched, I felt like it was like everyone was copying from each other, and they were all copying the wrong answers. It was just really weird. So yeah, like people are going to like MS config and changing like processor numbers and then doing system restore points and making a point to do that. I was like, this is really strange. So the gaming community on gaming optimization on Windows community on YouTube's a little bit odd. It was a mixed bag. Some things were okay that they were doing, and other things I was like, don't do that. That's just so let's get into it, and I want to explain what the options are, because you can't just follow a guide and then just say everything has to be off or on, and it just depends on the game itself and also your environment that you're in. You know, in Windows, obviously the heavier that install is, the less performance you're going to get. So there's a lot of factors I want to go over. What a good install looks like. I've done that a whole bunch, so I'm not going to take a lot of time on that. But also, I kind of want to explain gaming options and gaming utilities. I'm using an AMD card here. I know a lot of people probably are on NVIDIA, but I also want to kind of go back and forth with those two things, because understanding how to evaluate performance and how games and game options have sometimes a drastic effect, and sometimes it has no effect. And it just depends on the game. And I'll be using Elden Ring today because that's the game I've been playing the crap out of. I think I have almost 100 hours in, so I've been hitting it hard. But good to see everybody in chat. I saw we got Sam. How you doing, Sam? We've been seeing a bunch of you for the past couple live streams. Hikari, good to hear you finished your quick pass through. Nice. For those Linux people out there that got two graphics cards, doing some pass through is awesome. Love QEMU with that. All right, so sweet. Yeah, we're looking good. Yeah, these tweaks are universal when it comes to Windows. You could actually be Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11. The thing that most people don't understand about Windows is it is just the foundation of it hasn't really changed in like 20 years. I learned Windows back in the late 90s, even from 98. A lot of things that are still there. 98 SE. I was using MS config, and MS config's still there. Hell, you can even pull up a modem manager in Windows 11 if you want. That's one thing you need to know about Windows. So you have all these different levels and layers that have been added over the years, and understanding each one of those layers and how to configure it helps you. A lot of people rely too heavily on third-party software, and third-party software is bloat. It just is. You should not be installing some bot. You're paying $50 a year. No, that's a scam. There's no optimization software you need to be buying. I'm never going to tell you to buy one. You just need to configure it yourself. And I always show like my utility, but that utility is completely open source. If you don't want to use it, just pull up the code, and those are just all PowerShell commands. I'm just utilizing Windows commands that already exist. And you don't need to use that utility. You can just go, oh, I only want to disable telemetry, or I only want to do this. And that's kind of where I am at. And understanding those two foundations is really important to having a good Windows experience, because so many people bloat up their system. Yeah, and a lot of people rely on antivirus too. I'm gonna probably do some kind of antivirus video coming up soon, just because I really hate antivirus for the most part. I think it does more harm than good in a lot of instances. The built-in one's decent. There's a couple paid ones that are okay, but most of them I just like to crap on, because people like to install multi-antiviruses, and that is the biggest performance hit anyone will ever have. So I'll preface this whole thing, and we'll get on the desktop with, if you have more than one antivirus, you're basically installing a virus on your system. Let's just say that, because multiple antivirus will conflict. They'll be scanning your system a whole bunch, and you're going to have a ton of performance problems. So just important enough. Let's get on the desktop. See, this is old Windows 11. So that's what we're going to be using for today. We'll just pull up Task Manager. Is a good place to start. Performance wise, this is a 5600X with a Vega 64, a mid-tier system, about a $300 CPU here. And Vega 64 is about 4 years old, I think, 4 or 5 years old. And that's what we're using right now for this test. But a lot of the settings and things I'm going to explain today, you'll understand, oh, do I need that or don't need that? And that's kind of one of the big things here. Now, with NVIDIA or AMD, you're going to want probably their software or their tool to open up. If you're installing NVIDIA, I did a video on NV Clean Install. Check that out for you NVIDIA users. It has its own setting that you can definitely do, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, the screen's a little bit yellow, isn't it? That's probably from the tree in the background here. Let's see here. So probably first things first, let's see what your process count is. Check your processes. If you're like at 200 processes, you got some bloat going on. I'm pretty heavy at 130, I think, but I have some benchmarking tools we're going to be using. We're going to be using MSI Afterburner a whole bunch. So if you aren't familiar with MSI Afterburner, you can just come into their website. It's free, works on every card. AMD, NVIDIA, doesn't matter. We're going to be using this tool a lot. Not for overclocking though. I don't like overclocking, and I don't recommend anybody overclock their stuff unless you have aftermarket cooling or some type of system that is past the stock. But if you're on stock settings, overclocking is not worth it, because you're going to reduce the life of your computer. Unless you're one of those people that just buys a new computer every year or two, then overclock to your heart's content, because you're just going to sell it or get rid of that computer. But if you plan on holding your computer like 3 to 5 years like me, overclocking, not worth it. But we will be using this software because there's a lot of really cool tools in it. Specifically, we'll be using the FPS or on-screen display in-game to see how we're doing with these performance enhancements, and we'll see what the effect is before and after a lot of things, because that's the big thing here is games work differently depending on the game. Some settings are good for some games, some settings are bad for others, and you really won't know until you actually see your frame times and your FPS. Couple foundation things everyone should know about it is people obsess over FPS, excessive FPS. And if you're running at like a 60 hertz monitor, you need to be worried about 60 FPS. That's what you need to hit. Getting 120 FPS and a 60 hertz monitor, not really going to matter. That 60 FPS is really what you're going to see, because your monitor can only refresh at 60 hertz, which means it can only display you 60 frames per second. So understanding that first, what kind of monitor you're using. I'm using a 165 hertz monitor right here. If you're unsure what your monitor is going into, just go into display settings, scroll down to advanced display, and you'll see it right here. I'm running at 1440p 165 hertz for this monitor. I recently upgraded. I've been running at 1080p at 60 hertz for the longest, so don't feel bad if that's where you're at. Yeah, that is kind of yellow, isn't it? I wonder. Could be something with let's see. Let's go into, I think there's a display setting in Radeon software to fix the yellowish. Let's see, where's that at? They always change this up too. It drives me crazy. So here's what you guys are seeing. Clone display, custom color. Let's take that off. Does that fix our yellowish tint? Maybe a little bit. Hard to say. Or we could change it, not supported. We'll go ahead and look at some of this stuff. Eyefinity. Eyefinity is combining displays, by the way, into one display that Windows sees. I don't recommend using Eyefinity if you ever have a question. So if do custom control, let's see, color temperature. Let's increase that. So you can go super yellow, super daylight. I almost kind of like it a little bit hotter. Let's go ahead and increase that color temperature. So that's a good way to fix it. Now, this is only what you're seeing. I am doing, this is my display that I'm looking at over here. This is what is pulling into my software, my capture card. So just important to know those two things. But you can adjust color temperature and things like that if what you see. So I'm just looking over at my stream here just to make sure we got a decent color temperature. Yeah, that's a lot better. All right, cool. So now that we understand that, how do you get these process counts down? First thing I would do is just type debloat Windows into Google. Boom, I'll be the top result, and then you just copy this, open up your PowerShell with admin or Windows Terminal with admin, and you're gonna want Windows PowerShell, right click to paste, and this will go out and grab our the GitHub project and literally just launch the script, build it out for you, and then just do essential tweaks right here. This will go create a restore point. It'll basically set a lot of services in your system to manual so they won't auto start up. So after this is finished, you probably want to reboot your computer, and that will go ahead and reduce your process count by a considerable margin. Probably about 70 to 80 processes is what this shaves off. So it's going to really help you out. These are all mostly not really needed. I see a lot of people make a big hubbub about like performance visual FX. That is, if we look, I think it's sysdm.cpl is the old system panel. A lot of people are always talking about coming into performance, and they make it like a big hubbub about this. This is maybe give you 1 FPS. I mean, so if you really like peak and you really like animations on your windows and you don't like how it's just an outline, just go best performance or best appearance if that's your jam. For me, I don't really care. So I'm fine with old Windows XP look. So I like performance visual FX, but that's like one tweak you can do there. And these are all the old Windows 7 ones because they kind of locked a lot of things behind. With Windows 11, this is one thing I absolutely hate with Windows 11 is the sound panel. Dealing and customizing sound can be a little bit troublesome. So very, very cool in that regard. Power is the next thing Windows 11 does terribly. And I shouldn't say terribly. I should say it's tweaked for optimal battery life on laptops. So if you're really wanting to do that, I totally get it. It's fine. But if you are actually gaming and you don't want any throttling to happen, what happens a lot of times is when you go through here, they'll have this setting right here, and this will be set to like 10% on a balanced setting. And when you're playing a game, or let's say it doesn't register something, it'll throttle back your processor to save power, which is great on a laptop, I guess. But if you're gaming, you don't want that to happen. And this basically forces it to always be at max. And this is where this setting resides. Now, most people aren't going to see this setting because they won't have the old power panel, or they won't know how to get to it. And if you want like an old Windows 7 panel, just type control in your run command. Just control. You want control of your computer, control is the command, and you can get all of these old settings. And some things are mostly there, like the power is still there. Most things are there, but they're starting to remove certain things, like system pulls up this now, which is kind of funny. I'm like, oh man, all right, well I want the old system command. So it's still there though. sysdm.cpl is the old command, even though they removed it from the control panel. They never seem to remove any control panel. It's just there. I think user accounts is also one. Oh no, it's still the old Windows 7. But I don't even like this one. I like the old Windows 2000 control panel for users. So if you need to control local accounts on Windows, you might go user control or control user passwords 2. And this pulls up the old version of user account control. This allows you to do a lot more stuff with like advanced user management. You can actually come in here, disable like admin accounts. This is the underlying workings of Windows when it comes to user accounts. A lot of times Microsoft wants you to do an online Microsoft account because all this stuff isn't just in what's called a SAM file, and these are Hive files that are very easy to crack. So if, like, let's say you put a password on your Windows PC, if someone like me gets physical access, it'll take me like all of 60 seconds to break into your computer. So it's a little bit easier. But on the flip side here too, one thing you should know is even if you're on a Microsoft account, it's not any more secure, because the SAM Hive files on how Windows works is those files reside in the system folder, and that is the root of all authentication on Windows. So even if everything's on an online Microsoft account with two-factor and all the fixins that Microsoft's put in with TPM chips and all that stuff, underlying all that is this. And guess what? I can easily enable an administrator account, set a password, and then log into your computer as a local admin. So I get a little off on a tangent, but I wanted to at least show that in case there's a lot of people talking about online accounts, offline accounts. To me, it doesn't matter. It's like whatever. Do whatever you're comfortable with. Getting back to the performance side, I don't want to get too off in the weeds here. So let's go ahead and fire up a game, I guess, and get this going. I just wanted to show to reduce process account, control your updates. If you want to like more in-depth video, I've done that video like a billion times. So let's get into actually some of this stuff. All right, here we go. So we got that. One thing I will show you real fast is my Afterburner setup. This is how most people display their FPS. I usually start this with Windows and I start it minimized. So I usually apply those settings. And then I customize the OSD. You do monitoring. I like to see my temps, GPU usage, memory usage. I see this all the time. And it's like the most cringe thing in the world. And I see people on YouTube do it. And I want to say this to discourage people from doing this. Don't enable every single thing in here. It's not going to matter if CPU 3, I mean, maybe on like some old game that's CPU heavy, but don't enable like 12 CPU temperatures and 12 CPU usages. You're just going to fill your screen with a bunch of crap. So just do CPU temperature and then just go CPU usage. It'll cull all those together. Every modern game is going to use multi-threading. So maybe like if you're playing a game from like the 90s or maybe early 2000s, even early 2000s used multi-threading. So seeing all these clocks and usage for each individual CPU, don't be that guy. But the big thing here They honestly, I could disable everything in here. There's only 2 things that I need to see to really evaluate how my tweaks are doing. Frame rate, what's our FPS? Everybody cares about FPS. And then what are my frame times? Frame times are more important than FPS. Frame times will, if those are off or inconsistent, it's going to cause stutter. It's going to be jarring. I can run at 30 FPS with a good frame time than running at 60 FPS with a bad frame time. Just to show you, a 50% decrease, even at those low numbers, frame time is king. So you always want that as text and graph. So just important to know, this frame time is the most important thing and what you're going to notice the most. Everyone always says FPS because that's really what everyone obsesses about. So then we also set the on-screen display. I usually make it some crazy hotkey that I'm not going to accidentally hit. This will toggle it on and off. And that's about it. So we'll just go ahead, minimize that back. We'll probably come back into here. There's going to become some things. I will say disable, if you're an AMD user, disable chill and boost. Image sharpening, you can probably take that down to like a 30. You probably don't need 80, but it doesn't hurt it being higher. It just depends on if you want like smoother edges or more like jagged. If you're doing like a lot of first person shooter like Warzone, you're gonna probably want that a little higher. Enhanced sync, this is again like, this is like V-Sync or G-Sync, those types of things. I usually just disable it or just say let the application specify it. And for the actual game itself, I think this has individual games. We're getting average 84 FPS, which Elden Ring has a FPS cap. We'll remove that though. Anti-lag's fine. Image sharpening 60, that's fine. And enhanced sync, we'll go ahead and disable that and leave it to the application. Let's see what else we have here. Anti-aliasing, multi-sampling, super sampling. Multi-sampling is usually what you want. You're not gonna, I can't tell a difference between multi-sampling and super sampling. It's just very, very small. But if you have like 300 FPS, you might change this to super sampling. If you have like a really amazing system, most people multi-sampling. Filtering, you could, I think this is more for like DX9 games and old games. You could set this to whatever you want. I just leave it disabled. I don't think it really gonna matter anyway. Filtering quality, performance probably is what we're gonna use. Optimization allows the drive to override the application. Yeah, we'll go ahead and disable. We don't want to force these applications to do much other than kind of checking, because those applications, you want to give them the ability to basically modify on the fly, especially games, because certain games like certain settings, and if you force it to go one way, sometimes it can lead to suboptimal results. So a lot of times I like to disable these things that might force an application to do something. It just depends though. There's a couple caveats to that rule, which I'm about to go over. Tessellation, again, use application settings. We don't want to force that stuff. OpenGL triple buffering, again, pretty old setting, not really needed. And yeah, cool. It should mirror those. So we have all that. That looks good. And those are the settings just out of the gate. And we'll probably run into our game here in a second. Catch up with chat. Yeah, Raffles. Good to see Windows stuff is back. So I have a confession to make. I'm often known as the Linux guy on YouTube. Maybe not so much anymore, but I've just been gaming a bunch. And if I'm gaming, Windows is basically what I game on. It's what I know the best, and it also has the most flexibility. I can play any game I want, and I know I can get the most performance out of Windows, and that's why I use it for gaming. So I've been almost exclusively in Windows the last couple weeks because, frankly, I have not been working very much, unless you consider streaming to Twitch and playing Elden Ring working. I don't. I think I've just been kind of goofing off, and it's like me taking a vacation for about 3 or 4 weeks and just having fun. So that's why I've been in Windows, and why you're seeing Windows videos is because I still want to produce at least one video a week, and I can do a Windows video in like an hour. So most of the videos you guys have been seeing have been me like, oh crap, I need to get a video out. And I'll just run over and be like, what haven't I talked about? Okay, let me just make a video on that. And yeah, just a fun tidbit. But yeah, no, I still love Linux when it comes to not gaming. I still love it for productivity and just kind of messing around and just making a custom system. There's a beauty in that, and that's why I talk about Linux a lot, or have in the past, because it's just fun. But that's why when we get into gaming and stuff like that, usually Windows is king. All right. Oh, the caveats. Yes. One thing you might do is if a certain system, or let's say you're on a 60 FPS, you might come into like Rivier statistics, add the game that you're playing on, and if you're gonna frame rate limit it, do it here. Yeah, I know it's hard to see on my 1440p, but if let's say we wanted to frame rate limit this to 60 FPS, frame rate limit it here. It's gonna make a big difference. So I wish I could blow that up a little bit more, but that should start with Windows. But adding this frame rate limit will cause that game. We're not going to do a frame rate limit on this because we're going to unlock Elden Ring. How I unlock Elden Ring, I think GitHub, Elden. Yeah, I was like, I know I just had that up. If you are playing Elden Ring and you want to use it on like an ultra wide or unlock the frame rate, it has a 60 flat forced FPS. You can actually do it through here, and that's what we'll probably launch it in, just so we don't have any, it'll cap out at 60. We want more than that. So I think I just did a video on it, I think. Yeah, there we go. So we'll frame rate lock it at 144. I have a 165 hertz monitor. If you're at 144 on your monitor, you might change this to like 138, just a little bit below that refresh rate. It would probably be recommended. So we'll start this, and also we're gonna not be using EAC, which is easy anti-cheat, as that could negatively affect performance. And before I forget, let's come into here. I think we're gonna have a mishmash. All right, let's see what we have. Yeah, I stream on both Twitch and YouTube. I guess Twitch, I guess I breached my affiliate agreement with them, but whatever, they can terminate my account. I don't care. All right, settings. So you're in your game. What do you use? Now, I like borderless windowed, but you do sacrifice some FPS. Full screen, obviously recommended. Resolution, probably the most important setting. Nay, it is the most important setting in here. Resolution's probably the thing you're going to change the most if you have a mid to low end system. If you're on like a high end and it's like a $5,000 system, kudos to you. I'm not going to waste that amount of money. And nobody's sending me crap to do that. So I'm just going to have to deal with my mid-tier system. And resolution is the thing I will change the most out of every setting and every game, because this has the biggest impact. too many times do I hear people go, I got to set it to low. It's not working because I'm on a 1440p monitor. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't be that person, because I'll show you why here in a second. We'll start with, let's say, 1440p high. And we'll go from there. Let's go into continue. Yeah, Sam. It's basically 5,000 for just the GPU. Although I think prices are coming down. Hopefully. We'll see. All right, what are we at? 30 FPS. This is high settings. Look at the frame rate. So the first thing to look is in that top corner right over here. So if you're looking right over here, it's about 40. Hard to see a little bit, but look at that frame time. If you're seeing a bunch of like jaggeds, there's a little bit of one, but you can't really tell. And I'm just looking at that frame time to see, how does it respond? I mean, this is actually playable because the frame time is somewhat decent. But if you're seeing a bunch of peaks and valleys, you need to adjust things. I would still like it a little bit higher though. So let's modify some settings. One, I think we got way too many effects. But let's start modifying things. One of the first things I do is go to advanced settings. Before I change the resolution, usually I try a couple things. Motion blur. Nobody uses motion blur. Nobody likes motion blur. It shouldn't even be an option in games. I mean, let me know in chat if I'm wrong here, but pretty awful. Depth of field, depending on the game, this can make a big difference. I find these two settings usually are inconsequential, but they have a bigger impact on our actual frame times and our FPS. So it looks like we're at 58, 47. Do I have reshade on? Let me see. Oh, yeah, I have reshade on too. So reshade kind of gives that vibrance feel. And it's a little more washed out without reshade. But I sacrifice, it looks like, about 6 to 7 FPS with reshade, so we'll leave that off for now too. And reshade just adds a couple files in there. You don't need to use that. But probably the other thing here is SSAO. This is ambient inclusion, so it can be labeled SSAO, or I think there's a couple other acronyms I can't remember right off the top of my head, but ambient occlusion typically has a pretty big impact as well. So let's remove it. You notice I'm not changing much in texture quality, lighting, shadow, because those do make a very big visual difference. So when you're looking at this, now we're about 50 FPS. And if we look around, still looks pretty good. And getting a little more consistency, maybe. And you might even restart your computer or restart the instance of the game, but upper 40s to 50s, depending on what's going on. Let's run over here real fast. All right, that's pretty good. So let's push this over 60 FPS. How big is those resolution difference? You're about to see. A lot of people would start turning more stuff down and off, and water, shaders, lighting, all those things make a big difference. And turning those down to low, you'd be better served to decrease your resolution. Look at the difference between 1440p and 1080. There's not much difference. You can't barely see it. And let's say you're on a lower end system. I mean, you can see it a little bit, but I'd much rather have those high quality textures, shadows, and proper lighting than not. So that's why you reduce your resolution. And if, like I said, you're on a lower end system than what I'm on a Vega 64 5600X, and I still needed to squeeze out some more FPS, I would reduce this even further and go to like a 720, which a 720 resolution would be look like this. You can definitely see it on the text. Text looks a little blurrier, but the gameplay itself, even on this big old monitor, still looks pretty good. And now our FPS is climbing to like 70s, 80s. Also notice the frame times. You see it a lot more consistent, which is really, really important. So I can actually play at 720 and be pretty darn happy. So let's just go fight something real quick so you can see. Did I? I swear, I think I was playing inside. I think this is the wrong cloud save. Before I get too far into this. Oh no! Oh no, my cloud save didn't sync. Oh man. Alright, well, for today's video, it's fine, I guess. I was like, ooh, that's not good. So I was playing last night and I got pretty far. But anyways, you can see that's 720. Let's adjust this one more time. I don't like 720 that much. It's still a little blocky. So we're going to go back to 1080p. I think 1080p is a pretty good compromise here. Oh, Hikari, your girlfriend uses motion blur. Ew. Yeah, no, I'm out. All right. So let's just rest. We'll respawn those enemies. So you saw the 720 performance. Let's take a look at how this looks at 1080. And our frame times, again, are the thing that we care the most about. You don't want any huge peaks. Otherwise, you might get stuttering and other things. Wow. Ah, come on. There we go. And you can see right there, we got a little bit of a jump. So if that was happening a whole bunch, I probably would even decrease some more stuff here. One other thing I might do, and that could be close to water. There's a lot of reflections. Because I would like to keep it at 1080p. Probably take an anti-aliasing. Let's see if we get any tearing. You can see, especially the tree limbs when we remove anti-aliasing, how that looks. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit. Where if we turn it back on, and this is where those advanced settings really come into play. Let's go back to high, and you see how those branches aren't nearly as jagged. It's a little more less, I don't know, it just doesn't take me out of it. So anti-aliasing's important. That's why I don't really ever take it off. You might be able to get away with low quality. Important to look at. What else we got? Shadow quality. I don't really like removing this from like a high. You can probably get away with medium on shadows. Lighting, again, something I really don't like messing with. Reflections, you could probably change that to low. Water surface usually doesn't have too much. Shader quality, a lot of this I don't really like changing past medium. So you can see it doesn't really have that big of an effect on our FPS. A little bit. But let's get into here. We'll run over here. I think there's enemies. And you can kind of see in our frame times, it's jumping a little bit. But also, it depends on where we're at. Like, let's get off here and we'll just take a look. If we go down in this little dungeon, Here, let me get away from these dogs. You can see the dark, closed spaces when it's not having to deal with the environment. You're going to get a lot better performance. Lossless scaling. Oh, yeah, FSSR. I need to check that out. FSR, this game doesn't have it, but if you can do FSSR or DLSS, that's one thing I haven't mentioned because this game does not have that advanced setting, I don't think. Yeah, it doesn't have FS, but those two things are amazing. And let's see. I might have to go look up that software. Lossless scaling software. It adds FSSR to all games. Let's take a look. Because I want to see that because FSR here would be amazing. Lossless software. Lossless cut. That's not it. All right, how to get FSR for AMD. If you're NVIDIA, DLSS is what you want. I wonder if NVIDIA has something like this for everyone as well. Lossless scaling, okay. Let's see if we got a download tool. Lossless scaling. Run the game in windowed mode. I am borderless windowed. Okay. Lossless scaling tool. So set the game resolution to when it is multiplied by the chosen scale factor. Okay. Ah, okay. The tools is $3 on Steam. All right, I'll have to get this. Oh, it's $5 now. Ooh, that'll probably be. Oh, also you got NIS too. I'll have to check this out. That's pretty dope if that works for games like this that don't have FSR or DLSS. But if you're really looking for FPS, look at that those two settings for sure. All right, so this is old Elden Ring. We'll move in. This will take us to another dungeon. Yeah, the drummer, you're not wrong. I do love me some Elden Ring, man. And yeah, so this is like indoors. This is just amazing. So with this, I think it will move on here. 1 second, let me just exit out. Oh, wait, I need to get out of here. If you ever do get in this trap. Like, if you're at a really low level, this is like the worst place. It's not so bad, obviously, at the higher levels, but I got here, like when I first started playing that game, this was the first chest I opened. It was awful, but you have to basically run past all those guys. You're not gonna be able to kill them at an early level. Come down to here, touch this, and then you can get out of here. All right, let's move back and try some different settings outside. I almost want to try that lossless scaling and see how that is. I'm going to buy it real fast and see if it's worth $5. Because we've got a really good baseline at like 1080 with this. And I want to see if we had lossless scaling. Let's burn this image into our heads. And let's change the time of day so that's not part of... All right, here's the morning time. So this is the morning. This is kind of what it looks like. Let's get lossless scaling, or basically emulating FSSR or NIS for NVIDIA users, image scaling, and let's see if this looks prettier with that software enabled, because I am just curious how that'll look. Well, let's just kill this. All right. So we got our frame rate unlocker, but now let's go FSR. And that is right here. Let's open up our Steam. And we'll type lossless. Lossless. If I spell lossless right. Lossless scaling. There we go. So we're going to buy this 1 second. I don't want to put up my info on screen, so I'm just going to buy this right now. Yeah, I would have doxed myself for sure on that one. That would have been no good. It's only 1 megabyte in size. That's nice. And we'll get out of here and come back to our desktop. All right, back on our desktop, we now have lossless scaling. Let's see if this is worth anything. Is it worth the $5? I don't know. All right, a lot of people say it really helps, so I'm curious. All right, AMD FSR sharpness, non-original optimized version of AMD SR, which is better suited for less powerful GPUs, but has slightly... Okay, we're going to leave that off. I don't think we need anything here, which is fine. Scale mode, auto. So let's add Elden Ring. Auto scale, and let's just go over to it. I think it's actually Steam library. And there it is, Elden Ring. So we'll have that in there. Let's scale it. Do you need to launch the game to scale? Oh, yeah. Oh, that'll work. So we'll relaunch our Elden Ring without the cap on it. This, I think we probably, it's looking like we're going to need to do windowed mode to get lossless scaling working. But again, we'll see. We're doing a lot of little edits to this program. From Software didn't do a very good job of making it very polished with modern settings, but it's good. If you have FSR, you're probably not going to want to... You definitely don't want to use lossless scaling like I'm doing here. But for a game that doesn't have, you know, DLSS or any kind of scaling, this is okay. So let's go windowed. And then we should be able to come back in here and go scale. And then it should count down and then scale. Okay. That looks like it worked. So if we hit continue, it looks pretty solid right now, but I'm curious to see what our FPS does. Well, it looks better. Those frame times are not great, though. Interesting. So I'm just looking at the frame times on the side here. Let's see. Let's right over here again. Same kind of test. Ugh. It does not feel good. It looks better, but it does not feel good. You see all those spikes in my frame time? Makes for a terrible experience. Ugh. It's kind of stuttery. Yeah. Ugh. So this is a good example of something that on its head looks better, and you think it would be better, but it's really not, because jagged edges all over right up here. It's just, that's no good. That's a good example of just a bad setting. Get away from me, mosquito. Like Texas sized. Ah. I'm gonna die to a mosquito in this game. It could happen. Yeah, that's a terrible experience. Looks awesome, though. But that's why it's important, because in some games, I'm sure that tool could be a lifesaver. But in this instance, I know FSR would do such a better job if it was properly implemented in the game, or DLSS. But this... even though the frames were okay, it was around 60, which is fine. The scaling and everything with it, and those frame times and the stuttering, immediately disqualifies using this tool with this game in this fashion. So we'll go ahead and quit out. Actually, I think I can just... Can I quit? Yeah. Weird. But that is lossless scaling. Cool. I like the tool, but did not perform all the best for us. Kind of interesting. Yeah, it does. The scaling was impressive, and the fact you could take a window. I'm thinking of other utilities other than just borderless gaming to use that tool, and I gotta say, I can think of a couple. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna request a refund on it. I'll probably use it for something. It's nice to just have a tool like that, but I would definitely not use it for everything. And it was a great example. I'm kind of glad I tried it on stream, because it was a great example of a bad change where the FPS wasn't too bad, but the frame times, when I started this stream out, I said frame time is way more important than FPS. You want a smooth experience. When you have those jolts and stutters, it just ruins a game. That's why people love console gaming. Hell, I think just up until, PS5, console gaming ran at 30 FPS. So everyone obsessing, like the PC gaming people out there are obsessing over getting the most FPS, when most times it doesn't even matter, because they're working off of a 60 hertz monitor or something like that, and they're not looking at their frame times, because the frame times tell the true story. That's why so many people think console's a better experience, because they're obsessing over FPS when they should be really obsessing over frame times. And that's so important. If you take anything away from this, take away that. Look at your frame times, get that stable, and then obsess more over the resolution than the individual settings. Make those settings pretty good. There's some settings, obviously, that have a little bit higher impact than others, and it also depends on the game. Elden Ring, it didn't matter really what I did with those settings. maybe shifted the needle 10-20% in a certain direction. But when I started adjusting the resolution, you got to see the massive shift in performance where the frames went from adjusting from 2 to 5 to 20 or even 50 FPS in certain areas. And you get those big shifts. The resolution is king. So resolution, frame times, hopefully that gives you all a better understanding. Obviously optimizing Windows, making it less bloated, that helps a little bit. And the game itself. One other thing I didn't touch on that I'm just now thinking of is in Windows settings, there is like a game mode. I just turn it off. I have never had this work really all that well, and I feel like it's bad on AMD graphics cards. On my NVIDIA, I didn't really notice a change either direction, but on my AMD graphics, I noticed in game mode, it did some wonky things, and sometimes I just felt like it didn't do what it's supposed to do. And I think most of this is power tuning and making sure you don't have like updates running in the background and that type of thing. So I kind of manually control most of that anyways. With the power and updates, I think that's really important. So yeah, kind of cool. Kind of a cool little deal. I just wanted to show that. Tomorrow's video, I'm going to kind of reiterate a lot of this stuff. Can you show useless processes? Most times it's in actual services.msc or your actual Windows services. My essential tweaks Tong actually does this. Let me highlight your message too. 1 second here. Yeah, that most of it actually, if you want to reduce your process count in Windows 10 or Windows 11, typically you would do it through your services. Services usually has the most bloat. I don't recommend disabling services, but I do recommend setting it in a manual. That way, if something relies on that service that you just turned off, it can turn it back on. If you disable it, it can't turn it back on, and it can cause issues with whatever dependency that service has for a program you're trying to use. So highly recommend that. Can you yeah, so making custom ISOs with Windows is a big non-starter. I could go to prison. Microsoft does not joke around. There's a story about a guy that was refurbing old PCs. They had legit Microsoft keys, and he was distributing recovery CDs with them that would reinstall Windows and use the CD key that comes supplied with the systems. No piracy, none of that. But because of the terms of service and that, he ended up going to prison for 2 years for making custom ISOs for Windows. So over my dead body, will I be making a custom ISO and distributing it in any form or fashion, because yeah, they'll lock me up and throw away the key, so to speak. Microsoft does not mess around with that. However, I can show you how to make your own ISO, and I'm going to be making that video soon. I think this one, I usually do MSMG Toolkit. If you're familiar, let me see if I can't pull that up for you. I think they have MSMG Toolkit. I don't know if they updated it for Windows 11. Let me check really quick, because that I don't see anything. I bet it would still work on Windows 11. I haven't tried it yet though. I'll have to look at it. Last updated was 2022, so I think it will work. But MSMG Toolkit's a free alternative, which here, I'll just go to desktop real fast. This is a free alternative. Let me take off your comment. To make your own debloated ISO. If you want to pay some money and get a little bit better tool, you could do NT Lite. I'm pretty sure that's still around. This is a really good tool. The official Microsoft SDK tools are nightmare inducing for me. I absolutely hate the official Microsoft tools. Ugh, just having PTSD thinking about them. So I would use NT Lite or MSMG Toolkit. If you're interested in using the official Microsoft tools, I'm never making a video about it. You could pay me $1 million, and well, I probably would do it then, but I would just, I'm never going to make that video. I think Craft Computing did end up making a video, making a custom ISO using the official Windows tools. I want to say it was over 30 minutes long, and that was him doing a lot of edits to get it down to 30 minutes. It is awful. I think most of these, like if I did an NT Lite or MSMG Toolkit, which I have done an MSMG Toolkit video in the past on Windows 10, it will probably work on Windows 11. That took like maybe 10 minutes with the edited version. So these two tools is probably what you want to do for a simple ISO. I'm glad you're enjoying them, NSX. Thanks so much for the super chat. Which program should I use to create a bootable ISO for Linux? I would use, that's a good question. When doing that, let's come back here. Probably Etcher. This is pretty universal. Has really good if you're on Mac, Windows, Linux. Yeah, that was all three. This is like day 9 without coffee, by the way. God, I miss coffee. Oh, just another 31 more days to go. But Etcher is a great utility for doing this. If you don't want to use Etcher and you're a Windows user making Linux ISOs, another one obviously is Rufus. I think Rufus.io. No, it's Rufus. I think IE or something weird. It has a weird. Yeah, that was it. Has a weird address. I've never heard of IE in the web, but anyways, I digress. Rufus is an amazing one to create bootable ISOs. It does Linux, does a lot of them. This is Windows only. Etcher is kind of more universal, a little bit easier to do, I think, for folks, but Rufus does a pretty good job as well. I do caution some of these settings can make unbootable disks or ISOs, so it's really kind of important to do. Rufus does a great job with Windows-based ISOs, I find. I think I usually use Rufus when I'm making a Windows ISO. I think Etcher may do it. I can't remember the last time I used Etcher for Windows, but for Linux, both will work quite well. Have you tried Starship? Yeah, Starship prompt sign-in. Oh, I love Starship. It's amazing. Not working. Okay, MSMG Toolkit not working on Windows 11. Good to know. Thanks so much there, Zahid. What's your recommended system utility software for Windows 11? Your brain. I'm not even joking. Like, I hate system utility software when it comes to software's bloat. Stop relying on an application to do these things. You need to learn how to configure Windows using Windows utilities. I preach that all the time, mainly because most of that software turns to crap after a long time. A good example of software that I used to like back when it was created, CC Cleaner. You remember that? It turned into pretty much malware now. I mean, it is just a bloated mess with like a monitoring tool and all this extra garbage. And there's really no utilities or software utilities that I recommend. Most of them I'm like, ugh. If I use them, I go into my remove software and remove them afterwards. Don't leave software utilities or internet security suites. Obviously you need antivirus. You know, there's the built-in one that's decent. If you don't want to pay for antivirus, just use the built-in one. If you want to do something else, right now I think ESET or I've recommended WebRoot in the past, even though their detection rates are lower than others. I just like how they're out of the way and they don't bother me. That's the big thing, and they're not super heavy. I think ESET's quite a bit heavier than WebRoot, but have a little bit higher detection. But you know, getting into the weeds there a little bit. Oh, Sam, I got something special for April 1st. You all just wait. I've already thought it up. Somebody at my work actually was like, oh, dude, I know what you should do for April 1st. And I was like, that's just a genius idea. So I can't wait for April 1st. That'll be a good one. Love it. How do I get my Linux temp folder to work? Suddenly stopped working after a system update. You can just do sudo make directory temp, or just wipe it out using sudo and then make the directory and then give it privileges so your user can write to it. But it shouldn't. You really shouldn't need to do that. I've never run into an instance where temp stopped working altogether. Ooh. I like VMware better than Hyper-V. It's expensive. So if you have the resources available to use VMware, by all means use VMware. I find the free player a little bit limiting. So I would recommend Hyper-V if you don't want to spend any money. But if you do want to spend some money, you just want the best performance, VMware Workstation's, just the standards, pretty solid. I think it's like $300. Last time I looked. It's been a while though. I could be wrong. No, it doesn't. I never recommend disabling Windows Update. I recommend setting group policy to make Windows Update use common sense settings, like just downloading security updates. That's important. You need to be updating, but updating everything's just a recipe for disaster. So you always want to get your security updates, but none of those feature updates and all the other BS Microsoft rams down our neck, to where that's why I do group policy to manage my system updates. In the utility tool, which here, I'll just pull it up actually. I think it's still up anyways. Here you go. So when you launch this tool, Essential Tweaks does nothing to updates. This is just like disabling telemetry, just basic privacy settings really. And also culling down some of the process counts. So Essential Tweaks I've made to where everyone can just run that. It's not a problem. I would say the big thing here, security updates. Just click that. And then if you need like a feature update for whatever reason, you can click default settings. Or let's say something really goes awry and you get a virus and all of a sudden updates aren't working. This Windows Update reset will factory reset and put it to Microsoft standards. It'll literally wipe out any customization or anything that's been done to Windows Update and restore it to the way Microsoft wants it. So this is like the nuclear option. I put this in here mainly because there's times where I might repair a system or be out in the field doing something and I'm like, oh crap, Windows Update's all broken because it breaks. And Microsoft's troubleshooter is absolutely worthless. But somebody off of TechNet, which is where some professionals will put, scripts and other things that are really nice. I took a lot of the really good and combined them all into that one button press to fix Windows Update. This will fix Windows Update pretty much every time, unless your system is just completely hosed and it's pretty much a reformat then. But a great question. Very, very, very good question. Let's see, what else we got? NSX, did you miss that earlier? I said Etcher or Rufus would be the best for that. Oh, Ventoy, yes. Ventoy is amazing if you want to have multiple operating systems to boot into. I love Ventoy. It's pretty much what I use all the time now, as I just have like a 128 gig thumb drive and I just load all my ISOs on that. So that's what I carry around in my pocket is Ventoy. I should have mentioned that. Thank you for the correction there. That's a good one. But yeah, so that's how I do updates. Disable update services. I just got so many emails and people like, hey, I just want to completely disable updates. And I was like, I don't recommend it, but we can do that. You know, I never recommend pushing this button. But if you just refuse to use group policy, or for whatever reason you just want to make sure it never updates, you're going to be vulnerable. It's not going to update a lot of things. You're going to miss out on a lot of malware updates and those types of things. I don't ever recommend it, but if you only use your system for like one thing and it's not really exposed on the internet, it's an option. But again, I rarely would ever do this. I just got so many requests that I was like, sure, here you go. That's why that button exists. However, I will say this tool does, because it disables telemetry, it basically breaks Microsoft Edge. So if you're an Edge user, this tool's not for you. I would also say I did bundle this to an executable for people, and it does flag it as a virus because it does modify the system in a way that Windows does not like. So pretty much every antivirus will detect this as a virus. And that's unfortunate. I'm going to see if I can find some way around it. I think I'm going to reprogram this from WinForms to WPF on the back end and see if maybe that will alleviate the virus concerns. But I wanted to keep it open source, and I wanted to keep it to where people can just type this one command in PowerShell to basically download and run the program for free forever. And the executables was just kind of a way to fund development, so to speak. And yeah, I wish I could make it. I know I could close source this in like a C# or something like that and put this there, but I don't want to do that. I kind of want to keep it in this nice coherent WinForm setup because we're very easy to edit and deploy for everyone. So that's kind of why I do it this method. It's just not really what how a lot of software rolls on Windows, but that's why I do it this way. But two important things to note. Well, let's see what else we got here. Oh man, good to hear. SDIO is amazing. I love that utility. I use it all the time. Does disable background apps actually do something on Windows 11? You can always manually do that. Everything, all those buttons are just options. It's just I kind of make them all right there. So let's say you want to do that. You can come into here. I think what, apps and apps and features. Is there background apps in here? Nope. Let's go back one more. And did they take away the background apps in Windows 11? They might have removed that option. Let's see. Oh, I mean, you know, that's a good. They may have removed the option to kill background apps in Windows 11. I don't know why I'm just now discovering that. I feel like it was there. Huh. How about that? Windows ceases to amaze. Huh. Yep. I guess they did remove that setting. Well, how about that? Well, you all teach something, man. Good question, though. There is no more background app disable. Honestly, I always left it enabled because I'm constantly using WSL. So, you know, it breaks WSL when you do that. Because I'm always in here and I'm like, I need to do like a timer 10 minutes. So I usually do this on stream a lot. But WSL doesn't work when you do... when you disable background apps on Windows 10, but you can't even do it on Windows 11. Wow. All right then. Good to know. Ah, Chrome OS Flex. I need to make a video about that. I still haven't. Group policy required. Yep. Well, kind of. I think they've since patched this, but there is a method. I remember seeing enable group policy Windows Home. And I want to say, yeah, how to access group policy editor on Windows Home. And I want to say it was like a registry edit. There's local group policy. Yeah. Let's see here. So you can configure it without the group policy editor. Are they... Oh, look at this. Policy Plus. Is this still updated? 7 months ago, 8 months, 7 months. Oh, that's cool. So this is like a group policy editor for all Windows workstations. GitHub project. Well, that's cool. I might have to do a video on this. That is neat. Policy Plus. Let's just put that in there. Jot it down in my notebook. That's a neat one. That's one way of doing it. I think there was another way. You can enable through add the GP edit installer. Huh. So there's another one. So you grab this gpedit.msc, because if we look, gpedit. Most of the stuff I do in my in my toolbox comes from group policy. A couple things. Usually I double up though. Usually if there's a registry edit and also a group policy, usually I'll do both just to make sure I cover home users. But yeah, this is group policy editor, which is neat. And also, if you ever like get lost with group policy, gpedit.msc, you can easily come into drop this admin down, go all settings, and then go to state, and then sort by state. It'll show you what's configured, because there's so many different sub menus. Sometimes you're like, crap, I forget what I set on this system. You can go to all settings and then you can see what's been configured. Let's go all settings over here. Do I not have anything configured on this system? Oh, really? But you can mainly do, like in business, I usually do this. Come into Windows Update, expand Windows Update, and then usually... Huh. They're starting to phase this out. Oh, wow. Tricky, tricky, tricky. But yeah, usually there was a... Huh. This is all... All right, manage end user experience. Here we go. They've just changed the subfolders. I wonder when they did this. It must have been within the last year, because I haven't seen this yet. Automatically restart at a scheduled time. You can set that. Configure auto updates. This is one you usually do. Usually I will go, all right, auto download and notify for install is usually what I like to do. Install during automatic maintenance. Usually I do like Sunday at like 3 a.m. if this computer's on. And then just apply. And this kind of configures automatic updates. I usually do this through the registry or here, but I probably need to update this policy now that I'm seeing it. Anything else in here that I'm like, yeah. I think they removed the security updates as well. There's configure automatic updates. I didn't see a spot to specify the updates. Usually you would delay the feature updates, and that does not look like it's there. Let's see if there's something else. Detection frequency. Yeah, let's just check once a day, Microsoft, not on the hour. That's a good one. That's actually a new one. I'd probably set that. I'm going to add that to the script as well. Nothing there. Yes, here it is. Manage preview builds. They just moved it. So I would usually put disabled. So you won't get any preview builds. Select feature target. You'd put, hey, I want, let's see if we do, what is it? Sysinfo? Not sysinfo. Drawing a blank. What do I do for the version numbers? Oh, I typed it in so many times and now I blame no coffee. I can't remember. Winver, that was it. Thank you. So if you want to stick like with 21H2, you could actually set that right here. So you'd be like, I want to stay on 21H2 and set that feature target. Disable safeguards for feature updates. Select when quality updates. Usually I like to do a delay of 4 on this. Apply. Preview builds. Usually I like to say delay for 365, which is the max. And preview builds and feature updates are non-security updates. Quality updates are security updates that you need. So that's why these are probably the 2 most needed out of all these. This you probably don't need to do, or select a specific feature. You probably don't need to do that either. But this one for sure. These 2 are probably the biggest ones to manage when it comes to updates. But also, like, just to show you, whenever you go into settings, which I think it was already there. Where's settings? Windows Update. When you come into here, you'll notice it usually says like managed by organization or something like that. That usually is what happens when you do group policies. Anyways, good questions all the way. Yeah, Jed, I hear you, man. That's why I was thinking about doing WPF instead of WinForms. WPF would allow me to detect and also do dynamic features, like, hey, does this person use dark mode or light mode? Also does dynamic sizing in putting the elements for my toolkit into the proper place without me going, hey, having a hard code the, you know, hey, it's going to be at 100x down 50y. None of that business. Would dynamically put all that in there. So WPF has some really attractive things. I've never used it, and I need to learn it to see if I can't convert it from WinForms to that, because I think that would look so much better and be a better experience for everybody. Good question though. TCP optimizer for better net performance, or should I go by default? I've never used TCP optimizer, so I can't speak to that. I think you can change pretty much whatever you need. There's a couple wonky default settings in Windows, but again, you can set those yourself, just doing a simple regedit or whatever that you need. But there's no magic tool to make your internet faster. If anybody's thinking that does not exist. That's just scammers are going to try and scam you for some money, sell you some snake oil. It's not going to make your internet faster. But yes, to answer your question again, I don't really recommend any third-party tools for optimizing Windows. Most of those settings can be done with just standard PowerShell commands or registry edits. Oh, okay. NSX for creating a backup ISO bootable image. You can do, there's no backup ISO. Short answer. There's certain things, like if you're using Arch, there's some really cool tools like Easy Archer. Easy NIX, I think, is the YouTube channel that made that. Shout out to him. He did a good job making that ISO. However, if you're looking for just a straight bootable image or a backup, a full image backup, Clonezilla. I did a video on Clonezilla and how to properly image your system. Both Windows and Linux can use Clonezilla. You boot into the ISO and then you just have a backup device. You can even do SMB shares or NFS shares and back up to those. So you can actually, like I have a Synology box up here, I can back up all my systems and image it to it, and then, you know, hey, I'm good, which is pretty awesome. Archcraft or Endeavor OS, they're fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just they're just taking Arch and adding their own customizations to them. I think a lot of folks would benefit from just using the basics on that, though. I like to start from like a vanilla or a base install and then just add to it. So many Linux distributions are just simply, hey, these are my customizations to Arch, or these are my customizations to Debian. And honestly, Arch and Debian encompasses like 95% of all Linux installs. I've tried it. I've tried this Windows 11 Enterprise for gaming. It works well if you're talking about LTSC, as long as you're not having to interact with the Microsoft Store. So that's the big caveat. Occasionally there's going to be something that happens and I need the Microsoft Store and I'm like, ah, crap, I'm on LTSC. So a lot of times I like just taking a stock Pro, Windows 10 Pro, and then just customizing it myself. Oh, on Linux as well as Windows now. Okay. I'll have to check that out. UR Backup. What is that? UR Backup. Oh, that's cool. Check this out. Thanks, Sam. An easy open source client server backup system. Oh, wow. It even has a web interface for the backup server. I wonder if I can put that. I bet I can put that on a Synology box. Currently runs Windows, Linux, GNU, FreeBSD. Client runs on Windows, FreeBSD, Linux. Now that is very video worthy right there. All right, that's another one. Putting that in the notebook as well. That is cool. Thanks, Sam. That's amazing. I want to set that up now. I'll check it out, man. How would you go about switching, about GPU switching on Arch? I don't know about GPU switching. If you're talking about PCI pass-through, you might check out, I think Akari was talking about his quick pass-through project that he's working on if you have 2 GPUs. Right now I'm using Notion. Notion's okay. I'm not in love with it, but it does a lot more. I just haven't taken the time to really learn it. So I need to work on that a bit. I just haven't. So someday soon, for sure. Did Mental Outlaw do a video on single PCI pass-through? I like Mental Outlaw. Seems like a cool dude. Oh, I love it. Oh, Windows Firewall. You know, that's a fun one. And most people, when it comes to Windows Firewall, don't even understand where that's at. This is a good one. I need to do a video on this one too. There's just so much. I mean, you could literally just chain me in here and I could just make videos nonstop. Because I have like a gajillion different ideas and I just never really get around to making many of them. But for this one, Windows Firewall. This is a really easy one. You should always use this. If you ever want to configure or see what's going on with Windows and its built-in firewall, One, don't ever disable it. It does really weird stuff to the system. You can do complete pass through. I'll show you a bunch of different things with firewall. First up, how do you configure it? How do you see what's going on? Windows Firewall. WF Windows Firewall .msc. This will pull up everything you need to know about your firewall. Your inbound and outbound rules. Those are probably the most important. By default, if you look here, inbounds blocked, outbound is allowed. So everything's allowed out, nothing's allowed in that doesn't have a green check mark next to it. So let's say you're launching your favorite game and then you're like, oh crap, I blocked all internet access. You can come down through here and go, hey, where's Elden Ring? Okay, enable rule, and then it will allow that. So this is the profile. Typically you would set this profile to all, since most things are public or they're actually private or domain. I don't know if it even uses this 3 structure anymore with Windows 11, probably somewhere, but they pretty much removed, hey, I'm on a public computer. But anyways, regardless, you could actually change this too. And let's say you wanted this to be, where is that at? Here it is. Let's say you wanted Elden Ring to be on all, and you wanted to change that scope, I think it was, yeah, right here, to be domain, private, public. So then it would allow Elden Ring to communicate properly through both any and all remote, both TCP and UDP, which a lot of games do utilize both TCP and UDP. So this is where you would allow things in. Let's say you're just like, man, I hate Windows Firewall. It sucks. It's blocking something and I need to get through, and it's a convoluted mess, and I don't, whatever, I'm adding my rule and it's just not working. And you have all profiles on, you're allowing the program, and it's just still not working. And you want to just bypass firewall altogether. Super simple to do once you understand this concept. Most of these are just little simple firewall rules, and an easy way to do it is just make a rule to say, hey, allow all. Really easy. So we'll go new rule, and then we'll go custom rule, next, all programs, next, any protocol, next, any IP, next, allow the connection, next, apply it to everything, and then Windows no longer blocks anything. Probably not an exclamation mark. And now any program that has this computer will be allowed in. I don't necessarily recommend this, but if for you people out there that really hate Windows Firewall, it's an option. I would probably just call it allow all, but I wanted to at least show that rule. This is how you'd customize and also see what's enabled, what's not enabled. Also, any limited scopes. If it's like, let's say Snappy Driver was having issues, you might come in here, change this to allow all these different rules. This came about during the Windows Vista era, where Vista added domain, private, and public to the firewall rules. I think it was XP Service Pack 2 when they actually added the firewall. But it wasn't until Vista that they started adding these different profiles. This confused the hell out of everybody, and frankly, it didn't work half the time. And I think it's still in the back end, and they just haven't removed it, but you might add something like that. That's basic firewall rules, how to get around the firewall, how it interacts. This is always enabled. There's no way to disable this. You can turn off the firewall service, but again, it's a dependency for so many different things. I don't recommend that. You're better off just doing a complete bypass like I just showed. But that's Windows Firewall, which is a good one. Good question. Plan to release a bootloader theme with a mountain in the background you were working on a while ago. Oh man, I forgot about that, Sam, man. I had a nickel every time I forgot about the project I was working on. But no, I don't think there's any plan on that, but I need to revisit it for sure, Sam. I need to look back at it. I want to add more to my top 5 bootloaders, I think it was. If you look over here, Sam, I don't know if you saw this project. Oops, let me come back to desktop. I think it was top 5 bootloader themes. This has a bunch of different themes in here, where I think if we look at the install, what do we have? Vimix, Cyberpunk, Shodan, Fallout, Cyber RE. I'm going to expand this, and if you really like that mountain theme or something like that, I'll add it in here and just say like mountain or something. Because these themes are fun. I need to get back to adding grub themes and changing bootloaders, because I do love grub and a lot of the theme capabilities. But check out this project. It's really easy to set a lot of these bootloaders if you're interested. At that, I think I have what they look like right here. Really easy to install on Linux. This command will clone the repository. You change the directory to what you just cloned, and then you just do sudo install. This is Cyber RE. This is actually my favorite one. Cyberpunk, Fallout bootloader theme, Vimix, and then Shodan from System Shock back in the day. This kicked off, a lot of people don't realize, I think System Shock was like the foundation of like BioShock and other big popular games that came after it. I'm surprised they never really redid System Shock. That was such a cool little game. Anywho. Let's see here. Collaborate. Sure. I'm just waiting for the call. It's also a little bit difficult too. He's up in Canada. I'm down in Dallas, Texas. So maybe one day. But I don't make that many videos these days. I'm not a huge presence on YouTube. I just kind of make have fun with it still. I'm still enjoying it. How do I enable ICMP that doesn't have the option? I think you can just add the port. I don't think that's a protocol. ICMP, let's see. Well, let's see. ICMP, I think that's actually a protocol. Because this is the ping requests, and I want to say some of them I think you can bypass, but yeah, it's protocol. You don't. Yeah, there's no real way to bypass that. I was looking it up. If your router doesn't have the option, you can't, there's no ping port to really allow it to go through. So you'd have to put that router in like pass-through mode. Let's say you got like an AT&T router like me. The router sucks. It's awful. Don't use it. Don't use their DNS servers too, by the way, for pretty much any ISP. Use your own. And you probably would want to set up your own router, whatever that is. And then any basic router you buy at the store should have ICMP to enable ping requests. No, it doesn't use all the smaller buttons. Essential Tweaks is basically just telemetry, privacy, and then just sane settings. It's something that I just recommend everyone use, except for Edge users. If you're a Microsoft Edge user, don't use my tool at all. That's the only caveat to that. It's better. It's a lot better, actually, Anime Gamer. I would say I'm not using it very much, but occasionally it does pop up, and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't horrible. So, Windows Media Player needed a big overhaul, and it's better. This is true story. True story. Oh, yeah. He's local. Network Chuck is. I think I need to get a hold of him sometime. We could do some fun stuff. One of these days, that's definitely going to happen. I think that's a lot more a realistic collab, as he's just down the road from me. Him and I think 8-Bit Guy that covers like a lot of retro tech. He's out in Plano, which is real close to me as well. How to remove grub? You could delete your EFI partition and then just recreate it using whatever bootloader you want to use. You could do reify, refind, I think it is, basically. Or you could use Windows. I guess you just use boot mgr, which is not my first choice, but it's doable. So that removing Linux from a dual boot can be tricky if you use the same drive. That's why I always recommend a separate drive for Linux and a separate drive for Windows. Kind of keeps the two isolated. It's good. Termux. You haven't used it enough to have a really good opinion of it, so I can't really tell you. Depends on the router. I don't think he's able to do a custom rule because a lot of these ISP routers that come from like Comcast or Time Warner or AT&T, a lot of them don't have the ability to specify anything other than TCP and UDP ports, and they don't actually have anything to say, hey, this protocol needs to be bypassed. So that's why I was saying pass-through is probably your best option. Why does it break Edge? Microsoft Edge is very reliant on many system services that no other browser relies on, and it uses telemetry heavily. And since it basically disables telemetry, it breaks Edge. Well, it didn't break it, but it basically makes Edge not configurable because telemetry is heavily relied on with Microsoft Edge. So don't use my tool or don't use Edge. Those are the only options. And there's nothing I can do about that. I'm gonna disable telemetry. That's a non-starter for me. I'm never gonna run a Windows instance with a crap ton of telemetry in it. It's just a complete waste when I could use Brave or Chrome or anything but Edge. I'm a never edger. If that's a thing. Yeah, you can always enable remote access too. You got remote assistance. Like, let's see. One thing you can do is just do like system DM CPL, come into remote, and then you can just say allow remote connections. This will allow RDP into your system. Remote assistance. Why does that even exist, Microsoft? Like, it's so frustrating. Like, remote assistance, it's so terrible, not even Microsoft uses it. That's how bad remote assistance is. Like, why is this even an option? It should be disabled and ripped out of the OS. It's been there since, like, I think Windows 7 era, or maybe even earlier, and it's awful. It's so awful, Microsoft won't even use it. So why does it exist? Like, there's so many things that I'm like just bloating Windows up that just anyways, rant over. But yes, just come into system properties, allow connections, apply, and you're good. Hey, all right, Garv that talked to you on Twitch. Sweet, man. Welcome over here. So I don't recommend any custom ISOs. One, it's definitely blowboard, meaning it's illegal. And two, why are they giving out stuff illegal? Why would you do that? Why would you risk imprisonment to do it? Ask yourself these questions before you use these custom ISOs, because that's what's happening. And maybe they're just in another country and they don't have as strict or enforceable rules from Microsoft. But most instances, there's nefarious things at play here when it comes to custom ISOs. I'm a big fan of teaching you how to create your own custom ISOs, but utilizing someone else's custom ISO, rarely do they not have some form of malware or ill intent. You know, I just hate for people that watch me become like part of a botnet or some crap. Don't use custom ISOs downloaded from a torrent or something like that. You're gonna get infected. It's just not a good idea. There's a couple custom ISOs. I think Gen 2, I think they made some that were okay. I mean, I'm not endorsing that at all, but they also didn't do like an activation crack, a bunch of changes to the system. When you start changing the system, there's a lot of things that can get added that you really don't want. And that's why I'm always a big fan of either making your own custom ISO or slimming down and debloating an existing official Windows install. I'm never going to sign on for using a custom ISO. But Explorer Patcher, I'll have to look into. I don't have any experience with that one yet. I don't know. I mean, it depends on you as a person, Talk. I've used both. I had pfSense and then I switched back to Ubiquiti lately, just because I had an issue with an update with pfSense and I was just like, screw it. I'll just go back to my Ubiquiti. I had a USG just laying around anyways. And, it's fine. But I would say it depends on your environment. I have like 50 different devices connected through my network. My home router from like an ISP or a basic home router, most of them I hate. One, like your Asus the Nighthawk or what, all these other little rinky-dink routers. I'm not a big fan of them. I think honestly going with the pfSense or Ubiquiti would be a lot better solution. You know, the days of having a good Linksys like during the 2000s, like the 54 or WRT 54G, that was an amazing router. I think that was like some of the last era of good home routers, and I rarely have found a decent router nowadays that just isn't locked behind really crappy specs with bare bones installs and just limited capabilities, to where for me, I like a pfSense or a Ubiquiti gateway. They feel much better than a lot of other garbage, because a lot of these home routers now just try to do too much, and they're just not powerful to do that. They try and skimp by with the absolute bare requirements, and there's just none that I've like looked at and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I'm like, okay, it's not a Ubiquiti, it's not a pfSense, but I guess if that's all we can use, that's what we'll use. But it's always, that's my personal opinion. So for me, I would much rather upgrade my router than my computer. And I'm not the best person to ask for this question because I am very biased on that. Who doesn't want the right to repair, man? That's the thing. Everyone wants that. At least, you know, eventually, I think we waste so much money by just constantly running out and buying the new phone and all that stuff. I'm a big fan of repairing everything and using electronics till they're done. And they're just completely done. And I think if an electronic doesn't last at least 5 years, there's something wrong with that picture. So right to repair is amazing. Everyone should be for it. There's no reason for it not to be a thing other than to maximize corporate profits. Oh man, Draytech. I haven't used them in about 10 years, but I used to use Draytech routers all the time because they had PBX cards, and you could actually use RJ11 jacks on them, and I could program them up. But from what I remember 10 years ago, they're not exactly the highest quality. We used to joke around because I'd engineer a bunch of little PBX boxes, and at the end of configuring the Draytech routers, because it's made like overseas and it's not the best quality control, it would say configure configuration on or something. It was like this badly butchered version of configuration complete at the end of configuring those routers. But you know, having said all that, I would prefer a Draytech router over than the crap you can buy at Best Buy. I'd prefer it over like a Netgear or a Linksys. So take that with what you will. Draytech's not awful. They were okay, but not. I wouldn't call them quality either. You know, that's about as I can go with that. But they're cheap. I remember them being very cheap. I want to say a 1U mounted Draytech was like 150. I mean, it was in the hundreds. I want to say, very, very affordable. PC firewall, if you're on Linux, you could use UFW, IP tables. All of that comes basically built into most distros. If you're on Windows, there's a built-in firewall on Windows. Windows firewall, I just showed it. If you go start run and then just type wf.msc or Windows firewall, you can see all the firewall rules. Don't use a third party. That's the only thing I can say. You should never be going out and downloading a firewall. You guys remember Zone Alarm from the 2000s? Is Zone Alarm still a thing? Yeah, that's such awful software. Let's just crap on some more companies here. Zone Alarm. What do we got? Oh my god, it's still a thing. They're charging $40. Oh, what a scam. That's funny. That's still a thing. Anywho. Yeah. No, but you just use the built-in firewall. You're fine. Don't use the software firewall. What's a good hardware firewall? pfSense is really good. I like it. It has a very configurable firewall. I like how pfSense separates NAT and firewall rules, so you can understand a lot more about networking and also have greater control of your network, and probably greater security as well. Even though the latest update for pfSense, I ended up switching off them back to Ubiquity, because Ubiquity is like, I always call it like the idiot's guide to networking, because they just make everything so simple, and I just didn't want to mess with it. I was like, oh, fine, I'll just throw a Ubiquity in. It's like the de facto, I'm lazy, I don't want to deal with it, just throw a Ubiquity in, and it does pretty good settings out of the box. Hey, Tech Hut's in the house. How's it going, Tech Hut? Congrats, man, by the way. Father, man, big step. My son just turned 18, by the way. So you got quite the road ahead of you. Let's see what else we got. 1 gig fiber. It depends on what you got. There's if you want to use pfSense, Netgate does make some ones that do fiber connects, or Ubiquity. Both of them have fiber connects, so you can do that for 1 gig. I mean, you really don't need fiber though. Copper's just fine at those speeds. Yeah, thanks, power user. Appreciate it, man. Oh, yeah. Tekka, you did that files video. I remember seeing that on Twitter, and then like 2 days later, I remember you came out with your video on files, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was actually going to make a video about it, then you made yours, and I was like, I'm not even bothered. But if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, this is such a cool thing. Files, I think it was like Files V2 GitHub. Was that it? Yeah, this was it. But this was such a neat... It's like a sane version of Windows Explorer that doesn't suck. So here's your standard one, and then with files, let's see. Yeah, it was done 16 days ago. Actually, I think we could probably do it through Winget. Is that going to give us anything? Let's see. Oh, all right. Yeah, that got us something. But Terra copy. I haven't used that in a while. I think it's paid software now. Sad to say. Yeah, maybe it's not in here, but very neat. And Tech Hut did a video on this, I want to say. Oh, it's an MSXi bundle. Well, anyways, go check that out. It's a good video for those that want like a new file explorer here. Pretty neat. Got like tabs. It actually makes file explorer suck less. Yeah. I don't know why Explorer still sucks as bad as it does. There's really no reason for it. But, oh well. Microsoft being Microsoft. My MSI Pro motherboard is painfully slow boot time. On Windows 7, my boot time was 7 seconds. Now it's 55 seconds. You might disable legacy mode. It could be that, or during the install, I've seen this happen to some people. If you have multiple hard disks, sometimes Windows 10 and Windows 11 will pick a different drive and install the EFI partition on it instead of your main Windows drive. And what ends up happening is your boot will first try that one drive that doesn't have a proper EFI partition, fail, come down to the next one, fail, come down to the next one, and then finally find that EFI partition and boot. So that can really increase boot time substantially. So there's probably something with the EFI partition, and if you have multiple drives, probably something with that. That's my first and initial thought of what's going on there. You can always wipe it out and then like reinstall the EFI partition somewhere else. It's a little tricky to do, as you got to be somewhat familiar with part, which Microsoft's partition manager kind of sucks. My main drive has, yeah. Well, the question is there multiple EFI partitions elsewhere, and is it booting to that? Also, is it using EFI or UEFI, or is it doing legacy as well? You might disable legacy mode in your BIOS. So go into the BIOS, disable like CSM legacy mode, and force UEFI. That might also help, because it might be trying legacy and looking for legacy partitions through MBR, and then failing, and then finally failing over to UEFI. So disabling CSM and legacy mode might also help you out there too, Glenn. Yeah, you set it to UEFI only. Yeah, so do you have multiple drives on that system, Glenn? If you do, definitely try unplugging all of them except for your Windows drive and see what the boot's like. If it's still very long, then there's got to be some other factors at play there. I don't know what else and it could be other than taking a look at it, which I don't really do anymore. All right, guys. Well, I think that was a pretty good... Hopefully you learned something about gaming here. Try and lay out some stuff. I'll try and make my video tomorrow, kind of condensing some of this live stream about gaming performance and gaming settings. I'm sure I'm going to leave something out. There's always more to approach there. And I'll probably try and do some more optimization videos, maybe even make a project about this. But needless to say, still fun to try. And there's always little things here and there. But the big thing is trying to do it all yourself using the built-in Windows utilities that are at our disposal, and not downloading third-party utilities is the biggest thing I always want people to get involved in. Too many Windows users are too reliant on third-party software, and trying to get people out of that and understanding that less software on your system, no matter what operating system you're running, is a good thing. You should not, there's never a time where I'm adding software to a system that I don't see a performance hit. And removing software, debloating stuff, always a good idea. It doesn't matter what that software is. It could be, speed up your system 10x.exe. It's still going to slow you down. It's probably going to also install a virus if that's the name of it. But anyways, just a fun little tidbit. To finish this out, I see one question that popped into chat. I just want to touch on this. Defender. I want to tell you that I would totally run my system without Defender, and I would see a performance boost without it, but every update reinstalls it, and it's just a pain in the butt. They have this anti-tampering service that is just a massive issue to get around, and I spend more time disabling Defender than the time it saves me in performance, so I'm just like, leave it. Is kind of where I'm at with Defender. It's so baked into the system now, and Defender itself is a pretty decent antivirus, especially with online lookup, and it's okay. One last reason why I kind of leave it out of my PowerShell script is Microsoft's really started looking at PowerShell scripts that disable Defender. So anytime I would start modifying my PowerShell script to do it, because once upon a time it did disable Defender, or it had an option to disable Defender, and I would always get flagged. There's just no way around it. So that's why I try to make my toolkit. There's certain things, like I'd say the most risky thing you could do with my toolkit is disable Windows Update. And that's why it says big bold letters not recommended. But that's pretty much as far as I want to take my toolkit for the normies out there. That all said, you can still disable it and go through and remove, and you can see a performance bump. But again, I don't recommend it. It's kind of like just chasing something that's just going to keep getting installed. It's like removing Microsoft Edge. Every update, it's just going to reinstall itself, and it's just like, what's the point? That's why I'm kind of like that. Oh, drummer. All right, as soon as I shut down the stream, I'm going to play some chess. Maybe I still got some Elden Ring, but I got to figure out what happened with my Elden Ring sync, man. Oh, I jumped in gameplay today, and my Elden Ring was like level 101. I was like, dude, I'm like 110 now. Well, I think not quite, but I'll do the move in chess, and then probably jump on Twitch and do some Elden Ring later. Anyways, guys, take it easy. Have a great weekend. I'll probably see you guys next week. I may not live stream next Friday. I got some stuff going on. But if I don't, I'll probably just schedule the live stream for later. Just depends on what happens next week. And if that's the case, I'll try and make a community post about it. Anyways, guys, take it easy. Have a great one. See y'all in the next one.